You are watching Pack Media on Modi.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in India on the first official visit of an Israeli Prime Minister since 2003 and the second ever. It's day 2 of the trip, which includes a large trade delegation. We're now going to cross to Jerusalem for insight on Israeli reaction to what is happening there, and we cross to our correspondent Jordana Miller. Jordana, thank you so much for joining us. So, historic visit. We've been discussing here in the studio the significance for both India and Israel. What are you hearing? What can Israel expect, and what is it hoping to gain from this trip?
Well, I think on a business front, which is, of course, one of the main pushes for this diplomatic trip to India, Israeli companies are hoping to not only export more to India, but also get India to invest more here in Israel. India has 1 billion people. That's a lot of people to feed. And Israel has been a world leader in agriculture and innovations in agriculture and water. So this will be one area that Israel's looking to increase. And of course, then there is the $500 million missile anti-tank Spike missile deal, which Israel is trying to salvage. And Netanyahu certainly will try to get that deal back on the table.
And what are you hearing from the politicians on the ground there? I'm sure mixed reviews in terms of a trip like this at this time. What is the reaction there where you are at the Israeli parliament?
Well, you know, Israel has really been celebrating this kind of renaissance of relations with India, or I should say, really the birth of really strong ties with India. So there's been a lot of excitement about this trip overseas. But of course, Netanyahu is facing a lot of difficulties here at home with those corruption investigations. And that is something that keeps dogging his administration. And so, as well as what's happening here with the peace process, which before our eyes seems to be really falling apart, especially after that speech last night by the Palestinian president, where he basically said Oslo is dead, you know, we are finished with this process, and we're going to go to the international community. We're going to try to find an international framework. So, you know, the timing of this trip, there's certainly a lot of things at home that Netanyahu could be dealing with.
Jordana, while we've got you on the line, in response to that speech last night by Mahmoud Abbas, it went on for a long time. He was angry about a lot of different issues. What are you hearing where you are? What is the response there?
Well, I think, as we might expect from some of the more conservative lawmakers in the Likud party, there's a lot of condemnation for this speech, some calling it, saying that Abbas has really lost his mind in a speech where he seemed to blame everybody except the Palestinian Authority and its own leadership for the failure of peace talks. But, you know, this was really a speech directed at the White House to tell the President Trump there that whatever he was offering, which seemed to be in some sense scandalous given 2 decades of peace talks where Jerusalem was at the center as the capital for the Palestinian people, East Jerusalem, suddenly Abbas putting on the table that he was offered Abu Dis, and him calling this a slap in the face and saying that they'll respond in due time. So, you know, the reactions here, as we might expect, are divided.
As one can imagine. Jordana Miller, thank you so much updating us there from Jerusalem. I'm sure we'll be hearing from her throughout the day. Back to our studio, and Amir Oren, I can see you've got something that you want to comment on that latest report.
Just a historical vignette. The Indians, as well as others, are against Israel occupying the West Bank. But an Indian general, Indar Rikia, was partly responsible for the Six-Day War. He was the head of the UN forces on the Gaza and Sinai borders with Israel, and he reacted too positively to an opaque remark by President Nasser regarding the removal of the UN force, and he took them out with the approval of UN Secretary General U Thant and Bemis, and this caused the chain of events which brought Israel to control of East Jerusalem and the West Bank. So while the Indian government of the day had no control over General Riki's activities, nevertheless, in the annals of the Arab-Israeli conflict, he does have at least a footnote.
Owen, final thoughts?
Well, sure. Look, this shows how this relationship, on the one hand, is quite new. Again, 25 years we're celebrating. But on the other hand, goes back many centuries between the Indian people and the Jewish people. A relationship with some promise, but we should also say with some limits and challenges ahead. And I'm sure both will be on display through the course of this visit.
Owen Alterman, and thank you so much, as always, for your time. Amir Oren, thank you both for your insights. We were hoping to go to New Delhi. As and when that does happen, we will, of course, take it for you. But for now, we want to say thank you so much to our panel. We'll be watching those developments. So much more to discuss. We could go on for another hour, no doubt. But we want to thank you so much for your time. This is I24 News. We really appreciate you being here. Do stay tuned for so much more. Thank you for watching. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu are both speaking out about the dawn of a new era in the relationship between India and Israel. Modi took to Twitter to say he has a counterpart who is equally committed to taking the India-Israel relationship to soaring new heights. He says they are committed to facilitating the flow of people and ideas. In terms of defense, he says he has invited Israeli companies to take advantage of the liberalized foreign direct investment regime. He also says they are venturing into less explored areas of cooperation, such as oil and gas, cybersecurity, films and startups. Netanyahu is leading the largest ever trade delegation accompanying an Israeli premier. A short while ago, the two leaders spoke at a news conference in New Delhi. Netanyahu was sounding upbeat.
You are a revolutionary leader, in the best sense of the word revolution. You are revolutionizing India. You're catapulting this magnificent state into the future, and you have revolutionized the relationship between Israel and India.
Well, we now cross live to New Delhi, where we're joined by journalist Neha Punia. Neha, thank you so much for your time. We saw the two leaders embrace on the tarmac in New Delhi on Sunday. They were both singing each other's praises, clearly a very positive rapport. What are the main outcomes from the news conference earlier today in your mind?
Absolutely. I think the optics, the camaraderie between the two leaders who've referred to each other by their first names is what's dominated headlines. And that really is the big takeaway from the joint press statement made by both Prime Minister Netanyahu and Narendra Modi. Like you said, 9 deals have been signed. This is spanning cooperation across various fields, including filmmaking, tourism. There is talk of cooperation in the fields of oil and gas, as well as cybersecurity. Apart from that, the two leaders also spoke of the rich cultural heritage that both nations share, and they try to use that as an example for the kind of potential that ties between the two nations hold. Defense is another area that was spoken of quite extensively. Now, as far as the Indian government is concerned, they're saying that the $500 million Spike missile deal was not directly raised, but the two leaders have discussed ways to enhance defense cooperation.
Now, take us through what India will be hoping to benefit from this relationship long term. You mentioned 9 deals already, but long term, what is India hoping to get from this relationship?
Various things. I mean, Israel's technological know-how, its expertise in various fields like agriculture, water conservation, renewable energy is something that India is hoping to tap into, to learn from. Of course, India's relationship with Israel is primarily based on defense equipment buying, something that spans about $2 billion. That's something that India is wanting to expand on as well, but on its own terms. Prime Minister Modi said very categorically that while he wants to enhance defense cooperation with Israel, he would prefer it if Israeli companies manufactured locally after coming to India. So that's another scope of potential as far as India is concerned. As far as cultural ties are concerned, there's also something that India is wanting to build on, to have more Indian filmmakers shoot and produce their films in Tel Aviv. And of course, business, which lags behind. It's only about $2 billion but India feels that could be much higher.
Now, it's interesting that you speak about Bollywood and stars being encouraged to come and shoot films in Israel. One would have thought that you were the experts when it came to shooting movies like this.
Absolutely, but as far as the Indian film industry is concerned, popularly referred to as Bollywood, the fans of Bollywood span any kind of geographical boundary, including your Prime Minister Netanyahu. While speaking at that press statement, he said very categorically that he and his wife Sarah are very excited to be traveling to Mumbai later this week to meet Bollywood personalities. So India recognizes the kind of presence and popularity that Bollywood stars have in different countries, Israel being one of them. They want to tap into that.
And Nia, we're going to let you go, but very briefly, in terms of this visit for the next few days, what else can we expect to hear from these two leaders?
Well, there's one roadshow planned in Prime Minister Modi's state of Gujarat, where Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to be visiting Center for Agricultural Excellence. So we might hear some more statements as far as cooperation in fields of technology exchange are concerned. There's a visit planned to Mumbai, but apart from meeting the film fraternity, Prime Minister Netanyahu will also visit the Chabad House, which was attacked in the 2008 Mumbai terror attack. So we could also possibly hear another statement on terror cooperation and intelligence sharing. So while most of the work was accomplished today, there's still a lot more on Prime Minister Netanyahu's itinerary when it comes to his first India visit.
Nia Punia, thank you so much for your time, journalist in New Delhi, updating us there live.